I'm so excited today because I'm talking about a product I've been staring at for years but always hesitating buying because I feared we won't have time to use them. The gorgeous timeline figures from Homeschooling in the Woods. Stay with me to see why I like them, how I use them beyond history, and to get a peek inside our timeline. You'll also see how I search and manipulate the images to fit any project I need. Hi, I'm Laura from monkeymom.com with reviews and tips for homeschoolers. If you're new, please consider subscribing and turn the notifications on to see when I post new content. I really appreciate each and every one of my subscribers, and your support keeps me going and this channel running. So thank you. This video is part of a full blog post that you can find linked in the description below, so make sure to check that out for more information. You guys, I'm so happy to finally get my hands on these beautiful timeline figures from Homeschool in the Woods. I knew they were pretty, but the sheer amount of figures, helping tools, and variety included in the essential timeline library blew me away. I know that in the past they used to offer printed packs, but now they went all digital, and that means we can print these as many times as we need for our family. There are other types of licenses as well described on their website. So the main components of the essential timeline library are the timeline figures, the timeline notebook, and the placement guide. Let's look at each of these. The History Through the Ages collection of historical timeline figures is a huge collection of 1,444 figures that can be used in timelines and more. These include personalities, religious or historical, scientists, explorers, interesting discoveries, and so much more. The quality of these is amazing. They are truly gorgeous images illustrated in a realistic, classical manner. You can see I went ahead and printed all of the included images, having several per page, because we will use these on various timelines, and I got this thick book. The second part is the timeline notebook. This comes in two orientations, so you could have this on landscape or portrait, and the files you download give you access to both of these. You also get a blank timeline page in case you want to add extra pages. There are over 130 pages included in a timeline, and the period they cover is from 5000 BC to 2050 AD. Each spread has a quote included on the page. Please note that Homeschool in the Woods dating system reflects a young Earth perspective, so this might not work with all curricula out there date-wise. This is also presented from a Protestant viewpoint, so most of the religious figures reflect this. The third part of the essential timeline library is the placement guide. Now this is a real help for parents because it's a visual guide that shows us how to place each of the 1,444 figures included in this pack. It also contains helpful information on how to place them. I think the most intimidating thing about the Essential Timeline Library is the number of figures available and how to find them. So let me show you how easy it is to search for figures directly on your computer by using some keywords. Moreover, each batch of figures comes with an index. Figures can be searched by name, date, or even other categories like art, authors, ancient Rome, disasters, and so on. I feel that despite the amount of materials we've gathered for history, we are lacking a bigger picture perspective on it. Something to tie all these materials and events together, and timelines are the perfect way to do this. I needed to find a way to show M that history isn't linear, but it branches out, that events in history could have happened at the same time, only in various places around the globe. This is why I think timelines help, but I have other reasons for choosing to do timelines with M. Here are some of them. Time concept. We all know how kids have trouble grasping the concept of time. Even as adults, we still struggle with it sometimes. It's hard for them to go beyond a mere number to a real date in history when something happened. Timelines arrange all dates in order, visually, so kids can see the concept of time through history and understand how events built on top of one another. Layers of history. A concept even harder to explain is that history happened in layers. Some events are superposed and happened at the same time in multiple parts of the world. History isn't linear, but multi-layered. We could be reading from various sources about events that were unrelated and never realized they happened at the same time. For example, did you know that woolly mammoths were still roaming in nowadays Russia while pyramids were being built? Or that the Olmecs and Assyrians had a parallel development. So did the Incas and the Ming dynasty. Perspectives. I feel that history is largely misunderstood as a subject because kids don't get it. We didn't get it in school, so we perpetuate this fear or reluctance of history. Taking the above 2 points and mixing them together gives you a complete shift in how you perceive history. It makes history alive and interesting, even fun. Timelines can be used to record anything you study or that your kids find interesting. This is why I think it's one of the keys to changing our perspective on history as a school subject. It's not boring and dry, it's multi-sensory and it makes sense. Connections. Having a visual aid will help kids make connections, not only between events and figures in history, but also between the various mediums they use to learn. With a timeline, we can connect what we read in the Golden Goblet, for example, with the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Now we have the context of the book we read tied to the time in history when this might have happened. Keepsake. I don't know how many of you are melancholy sobs like me, but I have kept almost every piece of scrap paper that M ever used to do something with, and there were a lot. Just imagine how many years we will be using this timeline and then how many more years I will keep it to look back on it. And you see why timelines can be great keepsakes. How about creating your own timeline? I guess you could do that. I tried to, and it was a total failure, but it wasn't easy and definitely wasn't pretty, so we quit trying to make it work for us. The problems I faced were the sizing, consistent images, and even placement. Coordinating it all turned out to be a gargantuan task I wasn't willing to take on my busy schedule. I wanted to create a timeline with M from the beginning because I knew it would help, but the effort required to create one from scrap wasn't worth it for us. By using the Essential Timeline Library, I got access to everything I needed to create a gorgeous timeline. A timeline base, superb timeline figures, and a lot of help, including positioning all the 1,444 of the figures from the pack. It's been so easy to work on a proper timeline with the Essential Timeline Library because all the pieces of the puzzle fit together perfectly. No more worrying something isn't sized or placed properly. I absolutely love the gorgeous timeline figures and support from the Essential Timelines library. Having a placement guide handy, a lot of help, and ready sized figures that I can just print. We even had enough space for adding notes. The beautifully illustrated timeline figures from the Essential Timeline Library can be used in a variety of ways for history timelines, book reports, unit studies, notebooking, games, stickers, coloring pages, and many more. I will show you what we use them for, but Amy has a lot of ideas on her website too. We only have these for a little while and we've already used them for so many things. As history timelines, the primary use for the timeline figures from Essential Timeline Library is is undeniably for timelines for history. You can create timelines in the provided notebook or go bigger, creating accordion timelines or even huge wall timelines. We are using these stunning figures for history this year as a way to connect our reading with other sources. And before you ask, yes, we are doing ancient history again for 6th grade because Em doesn't remember much from when we did it 3 years ago. If only we had a timeline to help us review it faster, huh? Well, this time around we will. So you can see timelines aren't only for elementary grades but can be used well into middle and even high school years. They only develop into more complex tools. Maybe it's a big undertaking, but I really hope we manage to keep consistent with this one because it's an amazing idea, and with the help of the Essential Timeline Library, we will have a beautiful book of timelines. I like the way we started putting this together, and Em is having fun gluing these into place as we read about them. With the help of these tiny pieces of art from Homeschooling in the Woods and a well-conceived timeline notebook, we managed to connect and manipulate history in ways we haven't before. Notebooking. Because the timeline figures in the Essential Timeline Library come in PDF or GIF formats, you could resize them in any way you want. That means you can have them as tiny figures for timelines and stickers, or enlarge them for coloring books. I use the GIF versions of the files to create a whole notebook for astronomy. You can download the notebook pages, timeline template, and covers for free from my resource library on my website. But you will have to buy your own timeline figures from Homeschool in the Woods to go with it. This year for science, we will be doing Real Science Odyssey Astronomy 2 from Pandya Press. It's a great fit for Em, and I love the content. He loves it even more because there's not much writing to do. But there are some investigations he has to conduct for every lesson, finding out interesting facts about astronomy-related scientists or events. For example, he had to research about curiosity on Mars or read more about Einstein to find out what he had to say about the expansion theory. These are awesome ways to make Em become more independent and learn research skills. I found out more than I expected from the timeline figures in the Essential Timeline Library. Did you know that lettuce was the first food grown in space? Me neither. It was all there in the folders of the Essential Timeline Library. And since we're talking timeline figures, I added a small foldable timeline attached to his notebook where he will glue the small timeline figures as he completes studying about them. Games and flashcards. These figures from Essential Timeline Library are so versatile that I even made a short board game about explorers with them. Starting our US history reads, I realized we never covered explorers properly. And when we talked about explorers, the greatest one that came to mind was Columbus. Of course, there are many other explorers worth learning about. So I decided to make a little game of 10 explorers from all over the world using more timeline figures from my Essential Timeline Library pack. Again, you're free to download my board game. Just buy the Essential Timeline Library first because the figures aren't included. Another awesome thing about Homeschool in the Woods is that you get a ton of ideas and help to start using your timeline figures immediately. Amy has a lot of game concepts, and those can spark other ideas until you're like me, getting a head full of ways that you could incorporate these in your own studies. You can obviously make flashcards too. I made a set for him with famous chemists. He has to match their information to the figure. We'll tackle physicists next, and I can't wait to see what else I discover with my Essential Timeline Library. So after using these beauties in so many ways, I have a few tips for you. I chose to print everything and organize them into 3 sections or separately bound books: the timeline notebook, the figures, and the placement guide. This way I can have everything in one place and just use these printed resources for timelines while I use the digital ones for other projects. But you can print them as you go too. Amy already covers everything you need to know in her help sections, but here are my takes. Use a laser printer. To make the most of these, I recommend printing them on good watercolor paper or cardstock using a laser printer. This ensures you get no smudges no matter what medium you use to color them. Sticker paper. For younger kids and older too, you could make use of sticker papers to print this directly on it. Use the search function. I have these all downloaded on my laptop, and I found it easier to open the folder with all of them and use the computer search function to look for something. For astronomy, I use terms like astronomy, astronom, only part of the word because astronomer and astronomy both have it, universe or space. You could also use names to look for a certain figure. The results will show you both the PDF, the large and small figures, and the GIF, so you can use whatever you need. Manipulate. In order to make the timeline figures smaller or larger, or to include them in flashcards or projects, I made use of Canva. It's so simple, quick, and free. Because the Essential Timeline Library comes with high-quality images, you can easily resize these to fit any project. Watercolors. Amy suggests using watercolors, and I love the idea but not the mess. So we are using watercolor pencils and a water brush. Nothing could be easier, and the results are stunning, vibrant colors. I think it's pretty obvious that we are in love with this resource, and we will use this for years and years to come. Amy has done an outstanding job, from gathering the information and figures to painstakingly drawing each and making sure the style stays consistent throughout. I can only imagine how many hours of work went into these. When I first opened the Essential Timeline Library, I was blown away at how many items are actually included here. The help and indexes are amazing, well documented, and very helpful for parents that are unsure where to start. Beautiful. Amy Pack is a very talented illustrator that put together an impressive collection of gorgeous images in the Essential Timeline Library. By using these timeline figures, we get to create beautiful timeline books because all the images are consistent and elegant. I just love the classic and realistic style of these, and our timelines and games look like little works of art now. Versatile. I still can't believe I had so many opportunities to use the Essential Timeline Library in our homeschool already. These timeline figures really are made to adapt to any homeschool parent's needs, and the variety of things you can use them for makes these perfect for any age. Use them as coloring pages for your kindergartner, timeline markers for your high schooler, or bring them both together for a board game. The possibilities are endless. They can be colored or left as they are in black lines. They look great either way, and you can choose to print them with or without the text in a variety of sizes. Easy. The Essential Timeline Library is so easy to use, and I can't believe someone actually had the patience to draw all these and organize them all for easy access. I no longer need to look online for images. I don't need to sort through what information to add to the timeline because everything is spelled out for me. Make it personal. I love that you decide what your timeline will look like. You are free to color the timeline figures, leave them black and white, write the text yourself, or print the figures with text. The timelines can be created in a variety of manners, and so can the Lapbooks. Essential Timeline Library really offers you the possibility to customize these any way you want because they include a variety of sizes, options, and even ideas to suit everyone's needs. We also added notes and small drawings to our timeline and anything else that we wanted to remember. It is really simple to make this our personal timeline, different from everyone else's. Coordinates with your history curriculum. Amy also created helping guides to coordinate her Essential Timeline Library with two of the most popular history curricula, Story of the World and Mystery of History. You can find the links to these in the description. I hope this video has been useful. Thank you for watching till the end. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious.